Hey everyone, Andrew here. There's a huge amount of stuff out there for vapors now, and frankly, if you're just starting vaping, it can be a nightmare trying to figure out what it is that you should buy. You know, what's good for your pocket, you know, what's going to give you a good vape quality. Because in the end, if you start with something that's rubbish, frankly, you probably won't stick with it very long. But there is one thing out there which has been around for a while, which for me, I think is one of the best low-cost options for vaping. I think it gives you a very, very good standard of vape. And anybody who is starting on vaping for the first time, or people indeed who have been at it for quite a while, it really is an excellent thing. And what that is this little thing here. And that is the Carto or the Cartomizer. So what I wanted to do today is just go through very quickly what it is, what it does, how you use it, just because I feel that maybe there isn't enough out there about these things, and I really do think that they're fantastic. So we'll move on from here and we'll go through it stage by stage, the various different aspects of the Carto or the Cartomizer, and let's see where we go from there. Okay, well, when you buy Cartos or Cartomizers, usually they come in boxes of 5. There's a typical pack there. These are Bogue Cartomizers. Now, these things are made by a number of different people. Bogue would be one of the better known names. When you actually open them up, you end up with, I'll show you now, they're all sealed like this. And when you take one out, essentially it's in plastic, and it's got 2 silicone or rubber ends on it. So it just means that it's completely, it's sterile, it's good to use. And if you ever buy Cartos and they don't come like that, then I think you should probably send them back, because they do need to be like that. You need to know that they're completely fresh. Okay, one of the hardest things with these things is to actually get them out of the plastic. After that, it's a doddle to use them. So I think we'll go down close and I'll start to bring you through what it is that a Carto actually is. Right, I have a couple of boxes here. So we'll start with this one here. Now these ones, let's open it up. Now, as I said before, these things are the pits to get out of the plastic, but at the same time are obviously better off that they're nicely sealed and you know that they're all hygienic. So just snip off the end. And in this particular case, this Carto is a black one. Now I'll just put that down there for the moment, and then we'll open up one of these other ones here. Open that up. And there is a silver one. Okay, now there is a difference between these. I mean, they function exactly the same way, but I'll be talking to you later on about tanks and putting Cartos into tanks. You wouldn't really want to be putting a black one in because it's basically got a coating on the outside of it. So I'll show that to you now shortly. So let's go in a little bit closer on these and see if I can show you some detail on it. When you actually get it, just take the ends off. I think I'm going to pull out a little bit there. Take the ends off. And that's what you're going to have. That's the silver one there. The black one, as I said, it's identical. The only difference is that it's actually black on the outside, but everything else is exactly the same. So we can put one of those to the side for the moment. Now, with these pieces that you get off, that come out, and you always have this weird little bit here which actually sticks into the bottom of the connector, you can throw those away, except keep one of them. Now you keep the bigger one or the smaller one. I tend to do it with the smaller one, but always keep that. Don't just throw that in the bin, because you will need that to actually fill it later on. Okay, so let's have a look around this Carto. It's made of steel, and we have a connector at the end there. There's 2 tiny little air intakes on the side, and then we've got a negative and a positive at the bottom. So what that does is that actually connects into your battery or your mod, and I'll show you one of those shortly. At the other end we have this little piece. Now what you can do with this, because basically when you use one of these things you're going to be filling this up with liquid here, and then it would be vaporized by a coil that is actually inside this. And I'll just put up a picture of that now so you can see what it looks like. In that particular picture, it's a dual coil, so it's got 2 coils in it. You do get dual coil ones of these and you get single coils, but they both look exactly the same from the outside. So up here we've got this, which you can actually use as a mouthpiece, but generally speaking what you would do is actually get rid of that and then put in something like that. It's just nicer to use. Going to the black one, the only difference, as I said, is the fact that it is black. Everything else is the same. Connectors, everything. Okay, but with this black one here, if we look very, very closely, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see this, but essentially what this is just there you can see a line. And what this is sort of black paper, which has been wrapped around this. So it's essentially exactly the same thing, except it's got this black on it. Now, if you're using this on its own, so you're not actually using it in a tank, and I'll come to tanks later, then this can sometimes look better, depending if you've got a black mod, you know, that you're actually going to sit it on, then it could look better. But you can buy it both ways, so there's no problem with that. So I mentioned about dual coil and single coil. You also get these in different resistances. So you will get basically an LR, and if we look at this packet here, you can see that is 510, which is the type of connection on it, LR and black in this particular case. LR stands for low resistance, and the other type of version that you get is the standard version. Okay, now the difference between those is, and I'm not going to go into how ohms work and all the rest of it, but if you're using a mod, a battery, say something like an ego battery like this, and it's not variable, so in other words you're not able to change the power on this one here, you can twist it. This is an ego twist. If you're not able to vary that power at the bottom, so it's just a standard battery, then what I would suggest is you would only buy the LR ones, because that means that that will perform better on that battery. If, however, you have got a battery that can actually change and up the power, then you can get a standard resistance Cartomizer, and that will work fine, because it means the standard resistance one needs more power, so it means that you have to actually up the power into it to get a satisfactory vape out of it. What I tend to do is I don't bother buying the standard resistance ones, I just buy the low resistance ones. So it's just easier, because it means everything, you can stick it onto anything and it'll work. So that's basically the situation there. Now, in addition to these kind, which I'd spoken to you about, you can also get XXL ones. Now all that is that it's exactly the same, except it is longer. It's about that long there, maybe an extra centimetre longer. What that means ultimately is that it will hold more liquid in it, so that can be a good thing. But if you're going to use a tank, which I'll show you how to do shortly, then that ceases to become an issue. So for me, the XXL Cartomizers are only really of use if I'm using them on their own and I'm not using them in a tank, because a tank will feed liquid into these, so it means that it doesn't have to be a big one. And most of the tanks that you get out there are set to fit one of these standard size ones, not one of the XXLs. There's another aspect to these, and that is that in some cases you actually get a flanged Cartomizer. Now flanged just basically means, and I don't have one here, but I'll put a picture up. Now as you can see in the picture, basically there's a little lip at the bottom near the connector. So if you have a tank and here's a tank. This is a very straightforward tank. You can see at the bottom of it there is a little recess, and that little recess will take the flange which is on a flanged carto. Okay, so when you actually push it in, it means that it will go in and will be flush at the bottom. So what that means, and the benefit of a flange on a Cartomizer, is that when you have a drip tip which you've put into your Cartomizer, and if this is sitting in a tank, if you just pull that and it doesn't have a flange on it and you pull it too hard, you could actually pull this through completely, in which case then you get liquid all over the place. However, if you're half careful, that's never going to happen. I frankly have never bought a flanged Cartomizer in my life, because for me it just means a bit of trouble, because it means that I have to use a tank which has got a recess like that at the bottom, and that's the only tank I have like that. Most of them don't have that recess, in which case the flange means it's going to actually leave a gap, because it's going to be sitting proud of the bottom of this, so it means it'll leave a gap between your tank and your battery, which is down below. So for me, it's not worth doing that. Okay, so we've had a look around the Cartomizer. Now what I need to do is show you how to actually fill it. There are a number of ways of filling this, but really in the end there's only one way. The best way is, you know, I've tried all sorts of things, but if you want to just get it absolutely right, then this is the way that you should do it. So we'll go down close and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, I mentioned earlier on, you remember this, this is what, we had two of those, one at either end. I mentioned earlier on that you should actually hold on to one of these, don't just throw them straight into the bin. And there's a good reason for that, because they're very, very good. So it's a very useful way of actually putting liquid into these things. So the first thing that we need to do is take this little white piece out at the end. The easiest thing is just get something sort of pointy, pop it in, give it a little flick, and there you go. And now we can actually see the inside. And if it stays in focus, and as you can see from the inside there, essentially what there is there's a wire down the middle with a sort of a little cover thing around it, but there's actually a hole in that. The hole goes right the way through, right the way down to the bottom. You can't actually see through it there, but yeah, maybe you can. You can probably just see through there. So that hole goes right to the very, very bottom of it. So what we need to do here is this filler material, which is around it. It's just like a woolly kind of material. What we need to do is saturate that in liquid. And once we've got that fully saturated, that means that this is perfectly ready to use. But because of the fact that you can see a hole right the way through the middle of it, if you just dump liquid in on top of this, it's just going to come pouring out of the bottom, and it just won't absorb properly. So the best way to actually do this is to use what's called the Condom method. And the Condom method requires one of these end caps, obviously your Cartomizer, and then some liquid. So I am going to try, and this is a new one for me. I've never tried this before. This is a tea juice. It's called Forest Affair, 16 milligrams. So let's give this a go. So, oh, that smells actually quite nice. So what we then need to do is basically put our liquid into this here and fill it up about halfway. This is about halfway in the smaller of the two cups. Okay, I've gone a little bit more than half there, but let's see how we go. Then what we do is we essentially put in our Cartomizer. Go a little bit closer, see if you can see this. There we go. What we do is we put this in 510 connection end. This end here goes in first, and we just basically pop it into that like that. Now this is where they say patience is a virtue, and in this case it really is. What you need to do is just slowly push this down until you see a bead of liquid appearing. Now let's see if we can show you here. Until you see a bead of liquid appearing at the top. Okay, so you can just see it coming up there. Now what we want to do is we don't want to flood this over the top. So what you need to do is just very slowly, and depending on the Carto, they absorb at different rates, and you can be at this for quite a while. But you know, the good thing is it's only the first fill that it takes this long, because the wadding in there is so dry. So basically keep pushing it. Push a little bit more. Again, you can just see that there. Just wait, it'll disappear. Then we can go again. We wait and we disappear. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fast forward because this is going to take a wee while. But generally speaking, look, it's a couple of minutes, 3 or 4 minutes to actually get the first one right. But it's worth spending the time, because it means then that you will be completely, you will have your wadding completely saturated. Okay, it's nearly all gone in at this stage. You can see there's still a tiny bit, but that's actually happening as a consequence of me just squeezing the edges around here to get those last little drops up into it. So once you're there, you should be pretty much ready to go. So after that, I think that's enough. We can say that that's fully saturated. Take this bottom part off. Just get yourself a tissue just to clean it off, and then just give it a quick blow from the top down just to clear any liquid out that is in the middle there. So now that should be it. So we're pretty much ready to go. Now what I would tend to do is just put a little bit on the top, just run it down the side, just a couple of drops, just to give it that little bit extra. Finish it off. Just around the sides there, making sure not to go into the middle, because that means we'll just fill it up, fill that center part up again. So that's it. Now, when you actually have it glistening like that on the top, and it's like that right the way through it, then that means that you're ready to go. So literally all we need to do now is just get a drip tip, pop it in and see how it goes. Okay, here it is, our little black Cartomizer. You can feel the extra weight now because it's got the liquid inside it. So I think, yeah, the blue drip tip I had before, I'm just going to pop that into it there. Here's a battery that I have, which is an Ego style battery. This happens to be a twist, which means that I can actually vary it. But what I'd need to do on this is, most of these I think are about 3.7 if they don't, 3.7 volts, if they don't have a power changer at the bottom. So I'll just put it at what the normal standard battery would be. So then all we need to do is just actually screw this on. Now what you can get, because you put this on like this, and you think, yeah, it'll work fine, but it kind of looks a little bit crap in the middle there. So you can get these little beauty cones like this, right, which is essentially made to go onto this set of threads that are on the outside here. So what we can do is just screw that on, and then screw this in, and now as you can see those cones have disappeared and it starts to look quite nice. So as I said, I've never tried this particular liquid before. What is it again? It's tea juice and it's Forest Affair, 16 milligrams. So let's give this a go, see what it's like. It's very nice. For first time, that's very, very nice. So that's basically how you do it. If you're actually going to run the Cartomizer on its own without a tank, that's how you do it. So now let's have a look at tanks and what you do with a Cartomizer to actually get it ready to run in a tank. Okay, there are many tanks available out there, some, you know, going from very, very basic up to very, very fancy. So I've kind of got one of each here. This is a very basic one here. I showed you this earlier on, and this is the one that's got the flange at the end of it. And essentially what happens with this is, with a Cartomizer, it actually goes into this, pops out of the bottom, if we can actually get it to go through, like this, and then that's the part there which would actually then screw on to your mod like that. So by doing that, that means that you have the Cartomizer is getting its power from your battery, but it's when we fill this with liquid, it's going to be completely surrounded by liquid. So that means that as it starts to dry out, it's actually feeding liquid in. But to do that, we have to make holes into this particular Cartomizer. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So that's on that one there. The other tank that I have here is a sort of a fancier one, and this is a Carfanis tank from Greece. And this one is actually made really to sit on a Pravari, which is a bigger kind of a mod. But exactly the same principle. Your Cartomizer goes into here, it's surrounded by liquid, and you know, that's how you basically vape it. Another difference between these two tanks is this very basic one, it's more difficult to put your liquid in. Now it's still easy enough, but it's more difficult to do so. Whereas with this one and with many tanks nowadays, what you have is you have a little screw here, which when you have your Cartomizer in place and you then have a needle tip bottle or a blunt syringe, what you can do is then feed it in through this hole here, which is fantastic because a Cartomizer, remember, is going to last. It could last a week, it could last 2 weeks, could last 3 weeks, you know, even more, depending on what your vaping habit is. So the last thing you want to do is to have to keep sort of opening your tank and putting more liquid in, given that the Cartomizer is in perfect shape and is still working very well. So let's go down close and have a look and see what we do to actually make holes in a Cartomizer so that you can actually use it within a tank like this. Okay, how to use a Cartomizer in a tank? Well, as I mentioned before, what we need to do is actually make holes in it. So what you'll need is a punch. These are very inexpensive. There's all sorts of different sorts. And as you can see within this, there is a very sharp point that comes through here. And what that will do is actually pierce the metal to make a hole in it. Now, I also said earlier on that the silver ones are the ones to use in a tank, not these ones, because these have a kind of a paper stuck on them. So, you know, my advice wouldn't be to use the black ones. If you're using them in a tank, definitely use the silver ones. So we can put that one to the side. So here we have it. How are we going to put a hole in this? First thing we need to do is actually decide, you know, where we're going to put the holes in it, because all tanks are different. Some tanks have very deep bases. Some of them have, you know, slightly thinner bases. These both are reasonably deep. But the holes that we're actually going to put in this need to be surrounded by liquid. So if we were to put holes towards the bottom of this and then put it into this tank, then this metal sleeve here would actually be covering the holes and it would be absolutely pointless. So if we look at this here, where we would really need to be, if we line the bottom up here with the bottom of the tank, where we're really going to need to have our holes put into this is going to be around that point there. Okay, so in other words, it is above the base of the actual tank. So the first thing for us to do is to mark the position. The best position to actually do this. Now let me just bring the camera down a little bit further so that we can see exactly what's going on here. So as I said, what you do is you line up the base, not the very end, the base of the fatter part with the bottom of your tank here. Then what you can do is hold it, and we need to make a small little mark at the point where just above the base. So in this case here, it's going to be, make sure that I've got everything lined up there, it's going to be just about there. So as you see now with that little mark, if I line that up with that, that little mark is going to be above the base. So that's really, really important. So once we've done that, we know where we need to make our hole. So to make the hole, as I said, we need something like this, which is a Carto punch. All sorts of different shapes and sizes out there. This is the most basic one, and frankly it works very, very well. Now what you'll notice within this is that nearly all of them have got a hole there, and that hole is there for a reason, and I'll show you now why it's there. If I push the Carto in like this, you see the little dot, and then if I bring it in, I can now see that I'm lined up perfectly, because it's on the opposite side of this that I actually have the pointy tip which is going to pierce it. So if I pierce it now by twisting this, I'll know that the level is completely right relative to where I actually measured it. So to twist it, essentially what you do is you turn it. Now mine doesn't click anymore, but a lot of them click when it goes through, but you'll suddenly feel it actually piercing through. That's just actually gone through there. And then what you do is give it about 1/4 of a turn more. Okay? Then you can slacken that off. And while this is still in, you can then, if you're doing it so that you have 2 holes, which is what I tend to do, all you do is you twist the Carto around so you can see the other hole, which you can see there. And then when you actually tighten it up at this end, you know that the hole at this side is going to be at exactly the same level as the hole on that side. So again, what I'll do is I'll just twist it. If we wait for the resistance to suddenly go, there, it's gone there, and then about 1/4 of a turn, and then you can just slacken it off. So what we're left with now is a Carto that's got a hole there, and it's got a hole there. Now in some cases, you know, people just prefer 1 hole. For me, the method that works best is 2 holes. But I mean, if you're having, you know, a really, really thick liquid, then it could well be that you need 3 holes. Some people also do this by actually cutting a slot into it. But after, you know, lots of trial and error, this for me is the best method. And it nearly always works, because essentially what this is there's enough there for the liquid to leach in when it's in the tank, but not too much that it's actually going to flood. Okay, so there we have it. We've got that done. Now what I need to do is actually fill this up. Again, some people would prefer to fill it up using the condom method as I've showed you before they punch it. What I do is I prefer to actually punch it first and then fill it up, because by doing so what it means is that not only is liquid going into it from the bottom, as it's trying to fill it, it's also going into it from the sides as well. So I'll just fill it up now, and then I'll be back to you in a second. Okay, we're all filled up now. Again, you can feel the difference in the weight. So the next thing, I'm going to actually use this particular tank here. I'm going to do so because it's easier. It has this filling screw at the top. So just to get this all ready, we have our Carto filled. We need to actually put it into the tank. So you can just shove it in like that. Now, some of these you'll find that the O-rings at the top and the bottom can be quite tight, so you need to give a little bit of a push. But what's also really important is the upper edge of these Cartos is very thin metal, so you need to be careful that you don't cut yourself, because you know it could easily be done. So we've now got this in position. I'll just give it a little bit of a wipe here in the tank. And if we look closely, you can see that those holes that I punched earlier on are sitting above the deck. Okay, so that means that with liquid in there, the liquid will be able to leach into the actual Cartomizer. So all we need to do now is fill it. As it happens with this particular bottle, it's actually got quite a thin top on it. So that means that we should be able to fill it no problem. But otherwise, if you don't, what you should get is a needle top bottle, which are available in any of the vaping shops around the place. So as ever, with all of these things, fill slowly. So just filling it in there, because again, if you fill it too fast, what you can do is end up flooding the Cartomizer. Right, that should do us. You don't want to go too high to the top, but that's fine. So the next thing for us to do is to get a drip tip for this. So here, no, it's not actually. The next thing to do in this case is to actually put in the filler screw at the top. So what we'll do is we'll just pop that in, screw it into place, like that. And then we can pop in our drip tip, which is kind of a fancy one in this case. What I normally do is give it another quick blow, just in case when you're filling it that you had some liquid going into the center. Now that's pretty much clear there. So that's looking good. So what we now need to do is just pop it onto a mod and see what it's like. Okay, here it is, all filled up with our, and you may just see that there's a little bubble just happening there. And what that is you'll see that as you actually vape on it. As you vape on it, the liquid inside needs to be replaced, so you'll actually see little bubbles coming out of here, and that just shows it's working properly. Now this tank here, you can see from these dimples, was pretty much made for this thing here, which is a Provari. So let's pop it on. And when you do screw it on, sometimes you'll see that there's a little gap. See there's a tiny little gap there? All you need to do is then just push down, because remember this is sliding on the actual Cartomizer. So that's it. Now let's see how it works. Very, very forest fruity. There's a bit of menthol or something going on there as well. Perfect. So that's bang on. So one of the good things about the Cartomizer, well, there's lots of good things about the Cartomizer, is that once you have it like that, that can go in your pocket. It can go upside down, it can go wherever it wants, and that liquid is going to stay in there. The only potential hazard is if you were to pull this up while the Cartomizer is still inside, rather it's still screwed into the actual mod, you could potentially pull the tank off. But in reality, if you've got decent O-rings holding it in place, that's not going to happen. Another way around that is if you have a drip tip such as this, which is wider at the top than the actual top of the Cartomizer, that's also going to stop it coming off. So for me, it's a bulletproof way of vaping. It just means you can go anywhere with it. For most people, that's probably close to a day's worth of liquid in it, so you can go out, you don't need to worry that you're going to actually run out at all or whatever. So that's pretty much all I can say about that one. In terms of the other tank that I had, I'll just show you this quickly. When you have these, and I'll just put in a Carto into it, I'm not going to put liquid in as well. With this here, as you can see, there's no filling screw on this. So when it starts to go dry and it tastes a bit sort of burnt and just sort of scratchy and dry, the way that you have to fill this one is you see the end here. If you unscrew it, and then if you push down, see here, push in the Cartomizer like that, so that there's a gap. You can see there's a gap around the edge. Now the liquid is not going to come out because that's still sealing it at the bottom. But what you can then do is put your liquid down the side in here to fill it up, but no further than the top of the fat part of the actual Cartomizer. And then once that's there, you literally just push it back up into place. Normally best is just to hold the top and push it down onto a hard surface. And you're going to end up like that. And the liquid is actually going to be trapped inside. So again, look, it's no big deal doing it that way, but for me, I just find it a lot easier with these filler screws. But in each case, you really do need to get a needle top bottle, which you can get in any vaping store, or a blunt top syringe, because it just means that you can actually get it in that much easier. So that's pretty much it. As I said, I think Cartomizers are absolutely great. I'll continue using them along with all my other sort of fancier bits and pieces that I have. But I hope you found that informative, and best of luck, and hopefully see you again soon. Cheers!